So today we're going to be talking about COINTELPRO. Now, early in the when the FBI got started, J. Edgar Hoover was the scumbag behind the whole idea. They wanted to catch bootleggers. They wanted to have law and order or whatever. But when the 1960s came around, counterculture, hippies, Vietnam protests ended up making the social fabric starting to come unweaved in America. People were a little bit especially the government was weary of the fact that people were against the Vietnam War and against some of the realpolitik of Kissinger and just the horrible things that we were getting ourselves into and how it was coming to light. People were upset. Okay, the civil rights movement was in full swing. So there were a lot of perceived enemies of the state. And so what happened was you had COINTELPRO was a secret FBI project that was aimed at discrediting and neutralizing these type of groups that wanted freedom, like the Black Panthers or whoever. Even Pete Seeger had an FBI file because he was a suspected communist, with a great banjo player. So I'm going to read a little bit from Mike's essay today, and we're just going to take it from there. And if you guys like what you hear, please comment or whatever and stick around. We'd love to hear what you have to say and how we can make the show better.
Real quick, I want to give credit to Comrade Whiskey Chicken, who actually is the one who wrote this essay. I commissioned them to write this essay for my own podcast, and we just never found an opportunity to use it. But it's been sitting around for about a year now, and it's a great essay that I've been really eager to read through because it is really good. So.
I'm excited. I skimmed through it, and I'm excited to get through it too, because this is an important piece of American history that should be embedded into every curriculum in schools. We should know the more shameful parts of our history so that we can overcome them and become stronger as a nation. So I'll start off. It starts with a quote from the great Huey P. Newton, who was at one time the president of the Black Panthers. It says, "Black men and women who refuse to live under oppression are dangerous to white society because they have become symbols of hope to their brothers and sisters, inspiring them to follow their example." Huey P. Newton. Yeah. And this is very true, and the FBI knew that.
Yeah, they're very quick to crack down.
Yeah. So the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, originally named the Bureau of Investigation, was ostensibly founded as a federal law enforcement agency under the purview of the United States Department of Justice. The FBI has since been given the responsibility of investigating a wide array of crimes, duties for which it was perhaps best known. But however, beyond the investigation of more routine criminal activity that occurs across the state lines, of the scope of the FBI operation also extends into the fields of domestic counterintelligence and counterterrorism. So, taking care of their perceived enemies. Of primary interest to this historical investigation is the Bureau's work in counterintelligence. More specifically, how counterintelligence was used as a pretext for operations aimed at destroying the Black Panther Party, a Marxist black liberation organization founded by Huey P. Newton and Bobby Seale in 1966. Now, the Black Panthers were targeted as a black nationalist hate group by the FBI, with the operations against the party taking place within the scopes of the Bureau's counterintelligence program, henceforth referred to as COINTELPRO. It officially lasted from 1956 to 1971. There were several categories of COINTELPRO targets, from communists to American Indian movement and Puerto Ricans, but the Black Panther Party falling under the purview of the efforts to disrupt black nationalists. As the FBI sought to undermine groups advocating for black nationalism, black liberation, it outlined 5 specific goals, which were to guide Bureau efforts at sabotage. These goals are outlined later on. Considering the aims of the Bureau in combating black liberation, the evidence shows that through the use of an array of tactics, the FBI was highly effective at disrupting and undermining the Black Panther Party. As an organization in particular, the Bureau was most successful in preventing the Panthers from forming coalitions. It was good at discrediting party leaders and preventing the rise of a quote-unquote Black Messiah. Bizarre, right? Bizarre. And keep in mind, this was the same kind of shady government organizations like the CIA who at one time thought for sure that the Soviets had developed some kind of mind control. That's how stupid these people are and how irrationally paranoid they are. So they go out and they go, surely they have magic over there. They're in the lab trying to cook up their own kind of magic as a weapon.
The actual origin of brainwashing is so much more devious too, because the origin of it is during the Korean War. And, for people who are unfamiliar, the Korean War was actually a genocide that the U.S. carried out on the Korean people when they democratically elected like a socialist government after they had their own socialist revolution. So that was like the whole, when they say that North Korea invaded South Korea, it's like North Korea didn't exist. And when the U.S. claims that they invaded South Korea, they formed their own country the way that the U.S., claims that they did with their own Revolutionary War. And so the U.S. couldn't stand that happening because, resources, and you can't have a socialist government possibly spreading. That we all know the story of the U.S. fighting the spread of socialism. So the origin of the brainwashing was during that, when there were American soldiers who were either captured or taken prisoner, saw North Korea and saw like the way of life that they were building and thought it was better. Like they learned about communism and they literally became tankies and leftists like us. They saw there was a better way of life than just the rampant capitalism. And so when they got back home, or when they defected sometimes, like there is a Wikipedia page of just American defectors to North Korea. The U.S. government couldn't accept that. They couldn't accept that anyone would willingly choose a different system than capitalism. So they said, well, they must have been brainwashed. They must have been indoctrinated and had been broken down completely and rebuilt from the ground up. And it's simply not true. And that's actually how and why the U.S. started to develop its own deep state programs to try to brainwash people or indoctrinate them, do anything they could with drugs. And it was all unsuccessful because they're trying to brainwash people into something that is anti-human, which is capitalism.
Yeah. Yeah. And in the case of what we're going to be talking about later, which is the Vietnam War, it could have ended up like Korea, where we have North Korea, who's communist, and you have the South Korea, who's Western capitalist. But in the case of the Vietnam War, communism won. And the people, didn't matter what the United States tried to do to impose its values on this country, that they fought tooth and nail in the deep jungle for communism, for the idea that having a system that's built on equitable, foundations. It's kind of a neat tale, and a lot of people don't know that Vietnam actually we lost to communism, and they've been doing it ever since. So the program. This is a 1967 FBI memo. Initiating COINTELPRO in the Black Liberation Movement. The purpose of this new counterintelligence endeavor is to expose, disrupt, misdirect, discredit, or otherwise neutralize the activities of the Black nationalists, mate-type organizations and groupings, their leadership, spokesmen, membership, and supporters, and to counter their propensity for violence and civil disorder. Now, little exaggerated, but okay. So it reads on, the FBI made the purpose of its counterintelligence operations against the Black Liberation Movement clear in one of their own internal memorandums, quoted above. Initially, when issuing the August 1967 memo, the Bureau failed to mention any specific goals beyond simply stating that the efforts of the various groups to consolidate their forces or to recruit new or youthful adherents must be frustrated. Okay? No matter what they're actually doing, just them getting together should be penalized. Yeah. So one must imagine that the FBI field offices would have taken efforts to frustrate recruitment as a given. So further detailing of what exactly the Bureau's agents should seek to accomplish was in order. In a manner befitting an arm of the United States law enforcement bureaucracy, the FBI published a proper list of goals some 7 months later in March of 1968 in order to achieve maximum effectiveness and prevent wasted effort. For those of you listening and not watching, I'm doing air quotes. A total of 5 long-term goals were laid out in a memo expanding COINTELPRO operations against Black liberation organizations from 23 to 41 cities. The aims of the operation were to be as follows. Number 1, prevent the coalition of black militant nationalist groups. Number 2, prevent.
Supposed to be prevent.
Typo. Prevent the rise of the Messiah, the Black Messiah, who could unify and electrify the militant black nationalist movement. 3, prevent violence on the part of the black nationalist groups. Number 4, prevent black nationalist groups and leaders from gaining respectability by discrediting them to 3 different segments of the community. Ooh, this is some shit. Prevent the long-range growth. Number 5, prevent the long-range growth of militant black nationalist organizations, especially among youth. So, right there, everything that was just listened there comes out of the playbook of Machiavelli's The Prince. Okay, you discredit and neutralize your enemies when they start to rise up against you, and when that fails, and famously Machiavelli said, if one of the people starts really getting big, like MLK or something, what you want to do is if you fling him up, you take him from the pit down below where they're pushing him up out, and you fling him up to the villa and you shower him with all the luxuries and the niceties of life, and that they will become neutralized in that way. And if that doesn't work, Machiavelli said, well, then you just kill him. And essentially, that's what happened to MLK. Okay, so reading on. These 5 goals were briefly elaborated upon with the context of the March 1968 memo. However, all intents and purposes, the first sentence of each point adequately describes what the FBI was hoping to achieve. Should the Bureau achieve all of its long-term goals laid out in early 1968, the hope was that black nationalist organizations targeted by COINTELPRO sabotage would fade from prominence, unable to defend themselves within their communities or recruit new membership to keep the organizations alive.
My overarching point with all of this will be, since we're most likely going to be broadcasting a lot of this to YouTube, and I know that the YouTube audience is particularly like conspiracy prone, and they like to think that the biggest resistance to the deep state or to the American government as it exists, or to its 3-letter agencies and its military industrial complex, or to whatever the elites in the conspiracy you may think is going on here. This should show you what is actually threatening to the deep state. Look how hard they fought these like impoverished people in inner cities who were just fighting to like make things better, who were doing free breakfast programs, book readings, like educational kind of readings to like uplift their communities and show how to achieve equality in a militant manner. And then white nationalists stole all their methods, but don't take any of their good ideology and think that they're resisting the government by homesteading or stocking up a bunch of guns and beans or whatever they're doing, thinking that they're going to have some kind of like white nationalist commune. It's like none of the things that the right are doing are a threat to the government. They're all secretly aligning with the government, and they know it. They know that like if there's ever some kind of fascist, just real outright fascist movement in the US that incorporates the government, they're all going to side with the military, police, and the justice system and everything just to go after the minorities that they don't like. And that's the America that the quote unquote anti-government people want to build.
Yeah. All you people out there listening, maybe you got some libertarians out there who really believe that you think that libertarian and no regulation and unfettered free market capitalism is going to save your country. You're a fucking idiot, okay?
Yeah.
Sorry. Pardon my French. So the Panthers. Although the FBI nearly doubled the cities where it conducted COINTELPRO operations against the black nationalist groups, within the first 7 months of initiating the program, the Black Panther Party was not officially within the Bureau's crosshairs for some time. This may have been due to the young age of the Black Panther Party at the time and the program's initiation, as the party was founded less than a year prior. However, the Panthers would not remain untouched for long. It would take slightly more than a year for the FBI to shift a large quantity of its resources towards targeting the Panthers. Where once the Black Panthers were not mentioned on the Bureau's list of black nationalist organizations to target, a specific offshoot of COINTELPRO targeting the Panthers would be established in late September 1968. And that would be referred to from then on out as COINTELPRO BPP. The memorandum initiating COINTELPRO BPP was quite clear about what the scope of the project would be, stating that The attached letter will instruct the field to submit positive actions to be taken to thwart and disrupt the BPP. Okay. So although the FBI described a desire to see, quote, positive actions taken to disrupt the Panthers, the reality of their actions for the communities in which they operated was far from positive. The array of tactics implemented by the Bureau range from more mild bad jacketing, trying to besmirch the character of an individual, and printing cartoons in efforts to initiate violent gang disputes and depriving low-income children of much-needed free breakfasts. See, again, the free breakfast. Wow, how radical to starve people who are hungry. Yeah, very patriotic. The other thing is calling everybody, whispering throughout the ranks, oh, so-and-so is an informant or something like this. Positive actions. Looking at the dates when different FBI memorandums were written, it is clear that little time was wasted when the Bureau gave itself a mission to undermine the Panthers. On October 10th, 1968, an internal memo was published outlining a plan to split the Black Panther Party from the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, the SNCC. The FBI recognized that the two organizations are the two most prominent black nationalist extremist groups, and accordingly sought to end their cooperation and potential merger. Now, using a tactic that might seem childish but nonetheless proved effective, the Bureau sought to deepen a feud that existed between the Black Panthers and the SNCC. Now, that it involved a jab at the Panthers, where a chosen symbol where statements circulated within the SNCC. So, gossip, circulating gossip in a way that's going to neutralize and sow discord among everyone. It claimed that, according to zoologists, the main difference between panthers and other large cats is that the panther has the smallest head. Jesus. Weaponizing this.
It can't be this easy for them to really just dismantle a leftist organization, can it? Can it really be that easy?
Well, what is cancel culture other than a good way? I mean, sometimes people do egregious things and we should call them out, but in some cases, wouldn't it be a great political football to just call anybody a rapist who might, and that's the same technique. Now, whether or not that person is a rapist or not, it doesn't matter. The fact is, when people hear that accusation, it's really quite easily to neutralize the reputation of somebody.
I mean, I'll say something on the same page. I'll hesitate to go out on the limb of saying that like the rape accusations are quite the dangerous thing. Like I'll usually default on the side of taking those seriously, pretty much always. But just in the similar vein, I will say it's like, I mean, we have like a legal system that is already too lenient on the perpetrators as it is. So I'm just willing to let it swing in the other direction. But it's just like a conversation I try not to have just as a white dude, especially just like with other dudes and no like non-men present. But I will say, like, just in the same vein, just calling people like problematic or canceling them for any other number of perceived slights or offenses where they just say something a little off color. Like even like when we first recorded together and I just started using the R word, just saying retarded a bunch and saying like, hey, how about we like making a joke, like how about we reclaim that, but in some kind of good way. It's like if I did anything close to that in an actual meeting, like some kind of organizing thing, it's like humor like that would obviously not go over well. But my point is like, even when we take the struggle session idea from like the Mao's Cultural Revolution, and we think of the most stringent way to like hold people accountable for their slights against the party and their community, you're still supposed to have those people in the party. The whole idea isn't to just cancel them and ostracize them, make them outcasts and not let them work with you anymore. They're supposed to be held accountable. They're supposed to show that they've learned the error of their ways and they've corrected their behavior and they're going to be better going forward. And then they still get to be valuable members of the party and the community. Otherwise, you're literally just telling them you are now the outgroup. Go hang out with the fascists because those are the only people who will accept you because they don't care. And that's kind of the situation that cancel culture among leftists has led to in America, as much as that exists. People seem to take the individualist approach, which is we don't like those people. We're going to outcast them. We're going to like literally like what is the word from Kingpin? We're going to Munson them or something like an old reference, but like we're going to make these people outcasts and pariahs. That doesn't work. And again, the whole thing is supposed to be struggle sessions for accountability and then becoming a better person. And if they're still refusing, like they still refuse to do that, and they refuse any level of accountability and they're unrepentant fascists, well, then you're also supposed to give them the wall. So the whole cancel culture in leftist organizing as it exists in the West is like a reaction to not having the power to do actual accountability the way it's supposed to be done, because we don't even have the ability to give people the wall when they really deserve it. Otherwise, most of the people in the US would be getting that fucking wall.
Yeah. And being ostracized. Growing up, I always heard people being ostracized, and so I always said, sounds like it wouldn't be too bad to be ostracized. Yeah, right. But seriously though, when it comes to rape, look, 99% of the rapes out there, it's men doing it. So I don't have a lot of room to talk, but in the case of people like the guy from the Communist Party, Gabe something, this guy, you know what I'm talking about? It was just
not familiar.
He's one of these communist kids, ginger guy with a mustache. If anybody knows who I'm talking about, he got into some sexual he said she said thing, and then he got let go as the head of that Communist Party somewhere in America. It is a divisive trick, and so that's what we're talking about here. Is that the FBI used exactly this in order to sow discord and sow chaos and mayhem within the ranks in these groups, and it was successful. So next time you guys are organizing with your buddies, don't just cast everybody aside because one's got smelly farts or one says the word retard too much. You have to be accepting in the most, like, think like a communist. Don't think like an individualist,
Just to derail us a little further, I will say, like, one last point on this. I also think it would be a good idea to then have leftists update their tactics. Like, if you already know and you're willing to admit that the FBI and three-letter agencies, whoever is trying to dismantle you, if you already know that they use it as a tactic, well, then simply don't let men or any like non-marginalized people be leaders of your organization if they can be so easily accused of anything and then removed and you now have the snake, the head cut off of the snake, and your organization is kind of quickly dismantled that way. You've created a power vacuum. It's like, if we know that that's a tactic, we should adjust accordingly. And I feel like it's a problem that the leftists are not doing that. Like, there should just not be any white men as leaders of any of these organizations. And I think there's a justifiable reason even just to say that. It's like they don't understand the true plight of marginalized people in the US as white men, and they never can, so they shouldn't be leaders. And I think everyone in leftist organizations would stand behind that. And even if you have them as advisors, then if one of them gets cut down by some credible accusation, so be it. It's not a big deal. Sorry, just a rant there.
And have your organization be multi-headed. Like, don't have just one big head. I mean, you have to have a leader in a lot of ways. But what the Weathermen did, the Weathermen Underground, is they broke down all barriers of individuality. They slept together. They ate together. They woke up in the middle of the morning and went and did jujitsu in like the fucking park in San Francisco. They had sex with each other. They broke down all barriers where that. The closer you come to becoming one solid integrated organism, the harder it'll be to break you guys apart with petty little squabblings and he said, she said gossip and stuff like this. So, all right. So what they said was, according to zoologists, the main difference between a panther and other large cats is the panther has a really small head. This was a weaponizing jest, a poke in the ribs at the expense of the Panthers. The FBI decided to covertly provide a cooperative news agency source with an item, quote unquote, captioned with Panther pinheads. This Panther pinheads item was presumably a cartoon, as the FBI would show a fondness for using cartoons as a means of sowing discontent through pens. I didn't know about this. Using cartoons as a means of sowing. Yeah, dude. See, that's why you're doing the right thing.
Yes, you knew.
Meme lord. My man Mike's a meme lord. Cartoon. The FBI would show fondness in using cartoons as a means of sowing discontent between the Panthers and potential allies through the duration of the COINTELPRO BPP. However, if a copy of this comic survives, it does not seem to be available to any searchable internet archive. Regardless of whether this one Panther Pinheads comic survives to this present day, this same tactics was used to drive a wedge between the BPP and another black nationalist organization known as the Untied Slaves. In November 1968, the FBI approved an initiative to fully capitalize upon the BPP and the Untied Slaves. differences as well to exploit all avenues of creating further dissension in the ranks of the BPP. With the measures aimed at crippling the BPP, the Bureau specifically sought to invent inventive solutions to sowing discontent, which included the publishing of inflammatory cartoons previously mentioned. 2 such cartoons were produced depicting the untied slaves. Is it United Slaves or Untied Slaves?
I'm questioning now too, because there's 2.
Well, let us know in the comments if you guys figure it out later. This one group was hell-bent on eliminating Panther leadership. Now, these cartoons, neither the first nor the last, used by the FBI to sabotage inter-organizational cooperation. So using cartoons to piss off these rival, well, I wouldn't even say rival, but fellow colleagues, comrades from another organization, leaking them to the press, having them printed. It's really sick to think that there's a guy at the FBI doing like propaganda cartoons in some back room and getting paid by the government through tax money to do it. But okay. So Bureau tactics in preventing, I read that part. Oh no, Bureau tactics in preventing inter-organizational alliances proved quite effective as COINTEL efforts progressed. So it worked. Not only were potential alliances between the SNCC and the United Slaves sabotaged, but also the Peace and Freedom Party, Jewish Defense League, and the Blackstone Ranger Street Gang. Wild. So the JDL was also an extremist Jewish group, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's crazy that like they could have had that kind of unity among all those different orgs and it was successfully, prevented.
That tells you that you are living in a corrupt system. Like, doesn't matter what happens, because generation after generation, these sort of organizations pop up and they all get together and say, we should fight together. And the government scrambles to try to separate them all and discredit it. It tells you what a corrupt, rotten from the core system that we run in. So the first of the FBI's 5 stated COINTELPRO goals for the combating of black nationalist groups was the prevention of the coalitions between these groups, and readily available Bureau documents indicate that the FBI more than achieved their objective in relation to the Black Panther Party. Declassified memorandums and airtels show that Bureau sabotaged relations with at least 5 organizations, 2 of which, the Peace and Freedom Party and the Jewish Defense League, were not even founded on the principles of black nationalism, and a third, the Blackstone Rangers, was not even what one would call traditionally a civil rights organization. So not even an extremist group, right? The fact that the FBI not only went above and beyond in attempting to derail relations between the BPP and just about every party that attempted to ally with, but actually successful in their endeavors, it demonstrates the extent of the Bureau's accomplishments in the area of interorganizational sabotage. Now, accomplishments, that's giving it a kind of a positive spin. It's a very egregious thing we're talking about. Now, for as skillful or lucky as the FBI was in achieving their first 5 goals, there were still more areas with where great success was seen. So they didn't stop. They had many, many, many things. And so aside from pictures of gun-toting men in berets, the Black Panthers have also been recognized for their multitude of high-profile, charismatic members to the likes of the co-founder, Huey P. Newton, and Chicago chairman Fred Hampton, who was only about 21, I think, when the FBI killed him. Yeah. The FBI sought to discredit these leaders with the eyes of anyone that they could, including the responsible Negro community, the white community, and other black nationalists. Discrediting efforts extended to the highest levels of the party, with the Bureau seeking to pit leaders against each other. The relationship between Huey P. Newton and Eldridge Cleave was specifically targeted by the FBI, wherein the split between the 2 men was exploited to the greatest extent possible. Cleaver had served as a Minister of Information within the Black Panther Party and ran for the President of the United States as the Peace and Freedom's Party candidate in 1968. Whilst campaigning for president, Cleaver went on into exile over alleged parole violations, eventually ending up in Algeria. I think this is where he meets up with Timothy Leary. While in exile, Yeah. While in exile, Cleaver would fall into the role of the head of the Black Panthers international branch. Although his relations with the main branch of the party in the United States would deteriorate over time. In light of these worsening relations, particularly between Cleaver and Newton as individual leaders of the BPP, the FBI sought to drive a wedge between these two men. Now, divisive measures were already underway by May of 1970 when the FBI issued a memo reporting that the progress of efforts to sour relations between Newton and Cleaver. This memo described how the Bureau sought, and it reads like this, quote, to create friction between the Black Panther Party leader Eldridge Cleaver in Algiers and BPP headquarters, a spurious letter concerning the internal dispute was sent to Cleaver, who accepted it as genuine. As a result, the international staff of the BPP was neutralized when Cleaver fired most of its members. So, crazy. Yeah, right there. You give out, you'd say, oh, well, Bill said this. That's all it takes for a whole discrediting and ostracizing and, like you said, made a pariah. It's that easy, folks. It's that easy. So love your family, love your friends, love your neighbors, and don't let imposed cultural whatever.
But most importantly, where are the leftists who are learning from this? Like, I want to see some kind of like grassroots leftist org sending out an email forgery that takes down Amazon or something, because it causes some kind of like dissension among the leadership of the board of Amazon. They start not trusting each other and working against each other. It's like, wouldn't that be a great example to learn from? It's like, I don't know. You might actually have to like kidnap some board member to get the email sent from their laptop and make it look convincing enough, but it couldn't be done, folks. Like, be imaginative. I'm just saying. I
love this idea. Me and Mike are about to leak some
at the very
documents.
least, make a show about it or something. Like, just do something.
Me and Mike are going to get together. We're going to fake some documents and we're going to leak them. That'd be good. To be like, apparently the FBI is totally behind, I don't know. We'll keep it secret, folks. So it's amazing too that this guy ran for president and then got, exiled to Algeria. It's so crazy. So the fake use of the correspondence to further alienate Cleaver from the rest of the party was having, quote, excellent results from the perspective of the FBI. Not only had the relationships worsened, but the Bureau had achieved, perhaps unintendedly, the side effect was almost entirely neutralizing the international section of the Panthers when Cleaver dismissed most of his staff. Now, in spite of the success, the FBI was not keen to rest on its laurels as agents continued to hammer on the wedge, splitting Cleaver and Newton in 1971. A letter sent in the name of Connie Matthews, a BPP member in California, it intended to demean Newton and was delivered to Cleaver in mid-February. The false letter described Newton in terribly unfavored terms. In its fake letter, the FBI said that the comrade commander, meaning Newton, is not making proper decisions. He is weak and, quote, acting poorly. Within weeks of the Bureau delivering this letter, the division between Newton and Cleaver had grown so wide that the relations between the two would be entirely severed before the end of the month. When the pair appeared on the San Francisco area television station KGO, the Jim Dunbar show, and engaged in an intercontinental argument as only Newton was president in studio while Cleaver phoned in from Africa. This televised argument effectively made the split between the two leaders officially and widely known to the general public. The ramifications of the split, however, were much more consequential than simply losing Eldridge Cleaver. The Panthers, who had been close with Cleaver or allied with him over Newton, were expelled from the party. One of those purged alongside Cleaver was notable Los Angeles Panther leader Elmer Gerard Geronimo Pratt. Again, worked masterfully, and what happens, it happened in communist China. You have these purges that happen out of paranoia, and we're still probably going to uncover the role that the United States played in sowing dissent within communist China during during those times, because if there was anything the United States did well, it was sowing discord within China, because it knew the vast resources and the culture would eventually be a competitor to the United States. So Geronimo Pratt was a decorated veteran of the war in Vietnam who had initially moved back to Los Angeles to study at UCLA after his discharge from the Army. Now, through UCLA's Black Student Union, Pratt came into contact with the local Black Panther Party leaders, Butchie Carter and John Huggins, who recruited him into the party. Pratt had proved to be so effective in his work with the party throughout 1968 that he had garnered considerable favor with both Carter and Huggins. Indeed, the two who had recruited Pratt into the party selected him to replace them in their leadership roles should they be killed. This contingency came into effect after January 17, 1969, when Carter and Huggins were assassinated by United Slaves members. Wow, so they were already fighting with each other in violent confrontations.
Yeah, some serious infighting.
Yeah, and this is with if any leftists listening, it is the absolute most toxic, most poison, most common death of all leftist movements is infighting, aided by, of course, government intervention, spies,
Yeah, all the bad actors.
Those provocateurs. Pratt succeeded Carter as the head of the Los Angeles branch of the Black Panther Party, Huggins and Carter both as the LA chapter representative to the National Panther Central Committee. Now, the FBI had taken notice of Geronimo Pratt and his rapid ascension through the LA chapter of the Black Panthers, recognizing him as a, quote, key black extremist shortly after he joined the party. And in line with Bureau precedent, there would soon become cartoons published directly targeting Pratt as an individual, because those cartoons worked so good before.
Oh, they love the memes.
Yeah, I mean, it works. It's something simple, comes in. Cartoons are great. Cartoons can describe a lot, but political cartoons go back 300 years. By January 1970, the FBI issued a memo instructing the Los Angeles field office to continue working to attack, expose, and ridicule the image of the Black Panther Party in the community and to foment mistrust and suspicion among the current and past membership. Now, this memo is specifically addressed Pratt, clearly stating that, quote, Operation Number 1 is designed to challenge the legitimacy of the authority exercised by Elmer Gerard Pratt, Black Panther Party Deputy Minister of Defense for the Southern California, and John William Washington as an active member of the Black Panther parties in Los Angeles. So the Bureau would make good on their desire to undermine Pratt. Whilst in prison and waiting for trial for assault upon police, the Bureau would approach Pratt in an attempt to recruit him as an informant. Unfortunately for the FBI, they would find that Pratt was impossible to tempt, as they noted in the late June of 1970. I'm going to love this. In view of Pratt's dominant expression of hatred towards law enforcement personnel in general, no consideration is being given to re-interview Pratt for the purpose of development as an informant.
That's how they say they went into the interview room, and he just said, "Fuck you, pigs," and just wouldn't tell them anything else.
We found him to be wildly uncooperative. Fuck you, pigs. Undeterred by one failure, the Bureau would continue its efforts to neutralize Pratt. Among making bail, sufficient distrust had been sown by the FBI operatives to cause Panther leadership to question Pratt's loyalty. Now, representatives of the national hierarchy of the party would subject Pratt to several loyalty tests. However, the FBI again failed to ostracize Pratt from his comrades, and he passed all of his administered loyalty tests.
That's
ultimate
crazy.
Ultimate victory in isolating Pratt came roughly through 2 months later as a result of previously discussed efforts to foment the Newton-Cleaver split. By dividing the party between the two factions, the FBI had effectively secured the expulsion of Pratt from the Panthers. Although it is unlikely that the Bureau knew it at the time, Pratt had aligned himself with Cleaver, such in a way that when Huey P. Newton was released from jail on August 5th, he ordered the expulsion of everybody who's a Cleaver man, and Pratt was ejected from the Black Panther Party. So everybody who stepped up to the plate, who had an opportunity to pick up the ball and roll with it, was targeted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they just kept doing it. They kept doing it until the organization either... It's like... What if you had to pinpoint today or if you asked anybody who's even involved in it, what would be the day that Occupy Wall Street ended? What would be the day that the BLM Ferguson protests in 2014 ended? Or the day that any of the student protests like really fizzled out worldwide? It's like there's not a specific day. There may be a day that each individual encampment closes up or whatever. There may be a day that each individual branch of the Black Panther Party like folded up or just became what do you call it? Complacent enough, or I guess like liberal enough that they're just doing like mutual aid, something that's like non-threatening enough that they are allowed to exist. But that's how these leftist organizations die. It's not with a bang, but with a whimper. It's like they just sort of fizzle out into something acceptable, or they're dismantled little by little in a way that people find other things just by attrition.
You know, it's funny. It's a lot like the story of the great feminist icon Gloria Steinem, who was in the 60s and 70s burning bras and speaking out on feminism. But in the early 60s and late 1950s, she was actually a CIA. She worked with the CIA at going to parties in Europe and telling people not to be communist. It was a big anti-communist push. She worked for them, and she said, quote, "They were the most moral people I ever met," or something like this. She said something like they were a benevolent force and stuff.
Yikes.
So, like you said, leftist movements that sell out to a higher action. You know, they say, "Well, I'll just settle for feeding the homeless. I'll stop rocking the boat because." You know, so following his expulsion from the party, the FBI had successfully isolated Pratt from any possible assistance, making him extremely vulnerable as he was indicted on murder charges in late 1970. By the time Pratt was arrested and put on trial for the consequences of the Newton Cleaver split had led to many who had verified his alibi refusing to testify, and Kathleen Cleaver, wife of Eldridge Cleaver, was prevented from offering her full assistance to Pratt's defense during the trial. Although the FBI was able to successfully isolate or imprison some of the Panthers like Pratt, there were certain leaders who demonstrated a particular resilience to the slanderous character attacks or trumped-up charges, in which the Bureau resorted to their most direct tactic, which, you know, getting somebody imprisoned or killed is last resort because they don't want to make martyrs out of people.
Yeah.
So, all right. So Black nationalism had long scared the FBI, with one of their most prominent fears being that the emergence of what they called a Black Messiah. Here comes Black Jesus. In the eyes of the FBI, one individual with the potential to emerge as a Masonic figure was, of course, Malcolm X. As leader, Malcolm X was someone who garnered a great deal of attention from national media and could fill a room wherever he gave a speech. Moreover, he advocated for a staunch program of Black nationalism tied to a belief that, based on historical experiences of the Black community, violence as a means of self and community defense was viable and should be practiced. Thus, the FBI opted to pursue this permanent neutralization of Malcolm X by orchestrating his assassination, and an act they would internally take credit for. Malcolm X was assassinated in 1965. He would not be the last Black leader marked for death by the FBI by the 1960s. So, yeah, Malcolm X really stood out as far as being a verbose, extremely passionate speaker who was militant, advocating for violence, and not even giving too many concessions to white people in the sense of equality in some sense. Like he bordered on Black supremacy. Like he was angry, and he was rightfully angry. And no matter what, this was, of course, a huge target. And yeah, just similar techniques. I'm sure maybe we'll get to that, how they discredited and neutralized him. But ultimately they had to kill him because he was too damn fucking good. He was too good.
Well, also, and just a quick reminder, they also killed Martin Luther King, the more acceptable, nonviolent guys. So don't think that the nonviolent angle will save you.
Yeah, and they did that. They did that one first. They did the violent guy first, and then they were like, "Well, I'll kill the nonviolent guy just to be safe." Yeah. And I hope this comes up later too, is that the fact that the FBI actually sent a letter to Martin Luther King encouraging him to commit suicide.
Yep.
And told them that we were going to expose all your misdeeds. We've got telephone recordings of your private life. We're going to tell everybody about your adulterous ways and your hedonistic orgies and stuff like this. And yeah, it's terrible. And we're going through Fred Hampton next, but I wanted to say I hope that Stokely Carmichael is in here, because for me, he's one of the standouts. If anybody has the time to go look at Stokely Carmichael's speeches on YouTube, they are definitely on par with Malcolm X's amazing. These were great orators. They knew how to communicate, and this is what having information is one thing. Knowledge is great, but with knowledge without communication is essentially useless. You have to be able to talk and captivate a crowd and use language that gets to the heart of people.
Real quick, just a shout out to how much of a Chad MLK was for not only having such a badass, awesome sex life, the FBI was jealous about it, but then they threatened to expose him. He's like, fucking go ahead. I don't care. I look great.
Handsome man. He was handsome. Yeah. No, we love MLK. Got the short end of the stick, though. And it's funny that the history doesn't remember these points. Like, we hated him. Don't pretend like Nelson Mandela. He was a terrorist up until late 90s, early 2000s. Like, don't try to pretend you're going to name every street.
MLK was Hamas of the day.
Right. You're going to name every street after him 30 years later. But let's be honest, you hated this guy. It's a shame. It's a shame. But in some sense, I hope at least goodness prevailed in the fact that his image was kind of burned into our memories. But, don't forget that he was not liked. So let's move on. Fred Hampton. Okay. Everybody should check out Fred Hampton. I didn't really realize, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, you should know Fred Hampton. Fred Hampton was a charismatic young activist who served as the chairman of the Chicago chapter of the Black Panther Party. Hampton would be assassinated by the FBI in December of 1969. Initially, the FBI sought to utilize the same methods employed by Malcolm X's murder. Rather than breaking down Malcolm X's door and shooting him dead, the FBI opted to agitate a factional split in the Nation of Islam. And that's what happened to Malcolm X. He got somebody who was a disenfranchised, sort of disillusioned person, disgruntled within the ranks of Malcolm X's people, and, convinced him to assassinate him, which is it's a fucking shame. Roughly 4 years later, the FBI sought to use the Blackstone Rangers gang as their middleman for killing Fred Hampton, when a fraudulent letter, which was sent to the gang leader, Jeff Fort, in an effort to provoke him to violence against Hampton. Unfortunately for the FBI, history would not repeat itself, as the Blackstone Rangers did not see to Hampton's murder. In light of this failure, the Bureau found it necessary to take lethal efforts in their own hands. So by utilizing an informant within the Chicago Panthers, the FBI was able to make and acquire a sketch of Hampton's apartment by layout, which was put to use December 4th, 1969, on a very important date for everybody to remember. December 4th, 1969. The Bureau, alongside the Chicago police, raided the Panther chairman's home. Almost instantly, in the Peoria, Illinois, instantly, the Peoria, Illinois Panther leader Mark Clark was shot dead, and an unarmed 18-year-old named Brenda Harris was shot twice and wounded. I think there was even children in the room at the time, or in the apartment. The walls of the apartment were riddled with bullets, generally aimed in the directions of Hampton's bed, presumably intended to kill the chairman. Initially, only one bullet struck Hampton in his shoulder, causing serious injury, but not fatal injury. But the agents and officers raiding the apartment soon found that the wounded Fred Hampton, at which point it was recognized that he would live. They took a bunch of pictures at the scene too, and they wanted to prove that he shot first, or that and they actually circled black and white photographs where they thought bullet holes might be that were facing where the police were coming in, the front door. And it turned out that those those were used against them. But it turned out later that those were actually just nails, just hangnails just hanging out of the wall. Hundreds and hundreds of bullets or something were coming the other direction at Fred Hampton. So this was a clear case of the FBI murdering somebody. And for all you people out there that are going on and on about the Manafort and the FBI's corrupt, defund the FBI, all you conservative yahoos, hey, I'm right there with you. Let's do it. Do you know why we want to defund the FBI? Know your history. Know your enemy.
For the real reasons.
For the real reasons. The agents and officers raiding the apartment soon found that they wounded Hampton, at which point it was recognized that he would live. Unable to abide by this outcome, 2 shots were fired into the back of Hampton's skull, executing the chairman as he lay on the floor with his pregnant fiancée. That's right, she was pregnant. Following the execution of the young activist, an individual who partook in the raid proclaimed that he's good and dead now. The blasé manner in which raiding officers and agents remarked upon their assassination of Fred Hampton was accompanied by celebratory expressions on the faces of Chicago police officers who carried Hampton's body out of his apartment. A quartet of police officers are seen jovially removing Fred Hampton's corpse from the scene of the execution in a photograph taken in the morning of the raid. And this is true. And this goes to my hatred for humanity, because the sycophantic nature of people like police, they get their kicks from making sure that they're doing right by authority figures. If somebody from a higher standpoint and higher in the hierarchy comes and pats you on the head and says you're doing a great job, that is the only thing that they need to go forward. They will do immoral, unethical, violent, terrible acts as long as somebody above them tells them that that's all right. That's the whole premise of the Milgram experiment. We cannot help but to follow authority, regardless of our own personal thoughts and our own personal ethics. And police are just the textbook example of people that don't fucking think.
Mm-hmm.
You know, considering the goals of COINTELPRO as laid out in the FBI's March in 1968 memo, it can clearly be seen that the Bureau achieved its goals when it set out to sabotage the Black Panther Party. Through manipulation, the FBI was able to foment a split within the party itself, in addition to isolating the Panthers from several of its political allies, including at least 2 mergers that would have greatly increased the size of the Black Panther Party in terms of both membership and area of operation. This bad jacketing of specific individuals was likewise totally successful in isolating multiple prominent leaders within the party, such as Geronimo Pratt, prior to his expulsion from the party. I mean, additionally, the most egregious of the FBI's actions against the Panthers, executing Fred Hampton in his own house, showed the Bureau's capacity for neutralizing potential messiah by any means necessary. Through these continuous efforts from 1968 onwards, the FBI ensured that the Panthers would be unable to form coalitions, not only with Black nationalist groups, but also white, Jewish, Puerto Rican organizations. The party would struggle to maintain cohesion between leaders, and every potential Black messiah could be buried prior to ascension. By the time COINTELPRO officially came to an end in 1971, the FBI needed to only relax and let the repercussions of its own handiwork contribute to the Black Panther Party to fizzle out in an unceremonious end in the 1980s. So in 1971, what happened, why it ended, was you had a lot of activists at the time who were upset about what they were seeing. I mean, you had the assassination of Martin Luther King. You had the assassination of Fred Hampton. It was clear that normal, nonviolent, whatever stuff wasn't going to work anymore. So you had the birth of the Weathermen underground, who started bombing the Pentagon and stuff like this. Well, one of the groups who got together was a group that decided that they would break into the FBI headquarters, one of the FBI field offices, and get either the headquarters or the field, I forget which one it was. They broke into an FBI office, got the documents on COINTELPRO, and the only reason that we know that COINTELPRO existed is because these hippies went in and stole these documents and leaked them. And so I'm tired of people saying that breaking the law, or, like the law is the law. I know this week I had a thing about Charles Littlejohn, who was an IRS agent who came out and leaked a bunch of tax information, and people just want to say, well, he broke the law, and that's the law. And what's legal and what's moral is hardly mutually exclusive. So remember that they're not always the same. And people who think that that's true should go back to 1840 when slavery was, you would have loved slavery. So
it's funny because that sounds like something I heard when I hung out in more liberal spaces, because I noticed that your page and your interactions come from a lot more, it seems like right-wing libertarian guys who have found your content or whatever and want to argue from that perspective. So then they oppose things like anything that would hurt billionaires, even though they're again, supposedly rugged, anti, what do you call it? Free thinkers and anti, they're not, they don't want to be ruled over. Yeah. It's just it's really funny, but I see it happen in the leftist spaces too. If you suggest anything that's a little too outside the norm, people just immediately call you a Fed. So it's like the Fed jacketing instead of the, you got to stick to it. They're more worried about optics than they are about effectiveness, but in just a different way than it seems like your audience is, where they're worried about the law because of some kind of sacred value of it. It's even the anarchists who are very ACAB and very fuck the police and very anti-law still find it weird if anybody suggests something more than peaceful protests, even though, we have a whole history to look at.
Yeah, peaceful protests. All cops are bastards, but I'll just sit here and let them pepper spray me and beat my head in as I just sit here and do nothing.
But, I wanted to make a point earlier. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, to what you were saying before about the FBI's effectiveness, I can't remember what you were saying about people's willing. Oh, you're talking about the cops and how they're not. I don't want to say they're genetically predisposed to being willing to submit to authority in a certain way, but they sort of are. There is a certain subset of people who find themselves more amenable to being cops and doing that kind of subservient thing, and then violently upholding the rules of the state, even though they think that they're, again, good critical thinkers, and I'm sure they think they're strong individuals. But it always reminds me of, I heard that thing a few years back, it was probably on Reddit, where they said that they were able to domesticate foxes in just a couple generations by just killing the most violent ones, the ones that were not friendly to humans. And it just makes me think of what is the carceral state other than that? Removing people from society who are not amenable to following the rules of the state and the corporations. And I don't know if the solution to that is to make sure that people fuck prisoners and just have their babies or what, but it seems like they're doing their best to remove these people from society and make sure that they don't continue to mix with everyone else, right?
Oh yeah. And there's a concerted effort to get all people, not just people who are leftists or people who are critical thinkers who will question authority, but just anybody, minorities. They will, force sterilize big swaths of people because they think that they're going to harsh their fucking mellow, or they're going to, they're going to come in and take over white heterosexual white men stuff. It's not, but it's an excellent point. I think we need to go the opposite way. I think we need to find these sycophantic people who know nothing but primitive violence and get rid of them. And then, and then the people who are sociopathic, who are activating these people and lying to them and propagandizing to them and feeding them reactionary news shit and brainwashing them, should also be done away with. Then if you had a bunch of people who could critically think but wanted the best for humanity, we would be all right, And there's such a fine line between a cop and a criminal. You get those guys in prison where the prisoners and the prison guards, those guys love each other. They're the same. They're cut from the same cloth. They have the same fucking vocabulary. Okay. They have the same reading comprehension skills, and they both come from similar backgrounds. Nobody with a college education goes and becomes a prison guard. So it's an excellent point. Honestly, I don't know what it is, but like you said, there's a spectrum of behavior that exists in society with human beings. And on the primitive, there's people that are very, very primitive. And then there are people that are very, very civilized. And then there's everything in between. And And civilization is predicated on the idea that we just hold off on that. I want to kill this guy, or I want to rape this lady, or you just take that idea, just kind of hold on to that for a second and think about it, and think about the consequences of that. But like you said, there's plenty of people who don't need to, don't want to. Like we said last week, there are people who want to go to war, not because they have any kind of ideology. They're just happy that they get to work, blow up the weapon, use the weapons people, or whatever. Yeah, it's like, oh, I killed all these people today.
Badass operator stuff. I mean, that is what's funny about it. It's like flipping the script on the libertarians and the people who say they oppose the state, but then they're also demonizing criminals. It's like, no, bro, actually, if you oppose the state, if you're a libertarian, if you have a Gadsden flag, you should be a fan of the knockout game. Or like even like people who just go and do like robberies of whatever, because those are the people who are upsetting the state the most, obviously, by how much they're getting locked up, how much the state is brutally oppressing them. So it's like, again, you said that the cops and the criminals are cut from the same cloth. They are very similar. They're both the usually less educated, more brutish, obviously more quick to violence, but they are if you want to frame it positively, you could say they're the stronger, more rebellious types. Like the people who would actually be leading any kind of violent revolution if it were to happen. And it's just the police have chosen to at least appear that their violence is all on the side of the state, when in reality, they also do illegal things too, but they just are talented enough, or they have enough connections that they're able to hide it. Whereas the criminals have explicitly chosen the other path. And again, just to flip the script on the libertarians who all of a sudden become law and order as soon as the person who is anti-state is brown. That's what I like to say, is that all the libertarians should be supporting whatever black crime you're really upset about.
Don't tread on me, bro. You're the boot.
Yep.
You're treading on yourself. I see black dudes running into some luxury department store and taking all the sunglasses. I'm like, you go, dude. You get it. Get yourself some shades. Go sell them.
Actually, it was not capitalism anyway, because it was a bunch of marked up, like cheap stuff that was artificially inflated. So it wasn't real capitalism. Don't worry. Those are not good capitalists they're stealing from.
Yeah. You get slave labor to make clothes for some corporation with Nazi ties to sell at a huge markup while they siphon all the money into their pockets and into shareholders. And then it gets all ransacked and stolen by poor minorities. It's a great story. I love it. At the end of the day, those people aren't suffering. They're making out good. Loss prevention. Loss prevention. Suck it. You know, you're insured. Yeah, right. That's a good, I would advocate anybody who works at a Walmart in a small town where the entire economy is based around Walmart because they've choked out every other business. If you work there or if you shop there, go in there and take as much stuff as you can. Because you know what? They're going to siphon most of that money out of your community and give it right back to wherever they're headquartered, Frog Balls, Arkansas, or whatever. That's my favorite place, Frog Balls, Arkansas.
I love that reference, yeah.
Yeah. Take whatever you want, because what's happening is they're just siphoning money out of your community anyway. So don't
also,
hate
fellow
on
leftists, get a job in loss prevention at Walmart and then look the other way for everything. And start posting tips on how to steal from Walmart online and make a site career on that.
Yeah, I got some stories about that. I knew a guy one time. I knew a guy who had all the keys to all the cases in like a Kmart or something. Yeah.
Hilarious.
And I was like, well, I want something. Can you give me that? Oh, I can get you that. Yeah.
Awesome.
Look, people, sucking up to authority has never led to good consequences. If you're going to be obedient to something that you fully understand and are fully aware of. And if you find out that it's unjust, alter your fucking opinions. It's really easy to be a better person, you know?
Yeah, and if the things that the organizations and the institutions that you find yourself with the most allegiance to happen to be the one that like just everyone around you grew up worshiping and not questioning, try questioning it and see what that leads to. You know, I don't know. Yeah. Like if you just grow up in like the white Catholic town or whatever, or the white, Mormon town, wherever it is, and you become another white Mormon yourself, it's like, maybe look into it. I don't know. You don't have to, but
try to do something else. I was always happy with one of those Mormon kids like turns gay or starts doing drugs. I'm like, all right, try something new. Yeah. But there's a lot of people out there that just won't get it. It takes personal experience and tragedy and all those things to even think in a cynical way, right? To even start to look at things with a critical eye and say, But now we are lucky that we're living through a time when even conservatives now are really against the deep state. You know, I'm like, okay, you're almost there. You're almost there. Keep going. Read a fucking book. You're almost there.
Yeah. Read about Gladio. See who the deep state is and what they actually want.
That's where the Jimmy Dore crowd overlaps, where like all these old timers who are like, I like Trump, but I don't trust the government. I don't want to get vaxxed, but
yikes. Hilarious.
But they're all our comrades. We have Vosh. I have to deal with Vosh. Vosh is all right. He's a nice guy. Jimmy Dore, he says some right things part of the time.
That's crazy you had Vosh on. I mean, as much as I don't like the guy, that still is a great get for as far as guests go.
Yeah, he doesn't do many more stuff anymore, but he was not too keen on saying that progress was something you can't put the genie back in the bottle to some extent, where I really advocate for a nature-pilled fucking solution to some of the problems that we have. Like, and what we should probably do another episode about the news articles this week, but I was just, new Netflix movie just came out, Dark Waters. It's about how, DuPont poisoned America for 50 years with Teflon. So, yeah, I mean, and he, and I was telling Vosh, look, it's like these type of progress, these types of inventions, we're the guinea pigs. We don't have long-term research to know if any of these things are safe. These chemicals, glyphosate, DDT, asbestos, tobacco. It took forever. And these corporations knew it from the very beginning that, our internal documents say that we know that this is wrong. So in that way, I'm against technology. I'm not a total Luddite in that way, but I'm weary. And he's more like, I think he's a 21st century boy. Like he's got his anime and his bright LED lights everywhere and shit. And I'm just,
yeah.
And the antidepressants.
They don't know about they have no control groups anymore. They don't know what the consequences are because they can't find humans without microplastics, without PFAs, to test against. Yeah. So they can't say what the effects are.
Yeah, it's fucked up. And they also grew up in a time when ADD medicine was totally normal. And they've sort of taken that as normal, where I dismiss that completely. Like, you're telling me the stimuli from the modern world is playing no effect in your primitive, ancient fucking body.
Mm-hmm.
It's got to be.
That's not why you need the medication. Yeah, I can see it.
It's like Ozempic. It's like you're eating too much fast food, fatty foods, sugary foods, salty foods, and now you're fat. And you, instead of just stop doing that to yourself, you need a shot or a pill or whatever it is. I think it's a shot. And so you're just basically bandaging. You're looking for a better Band-Aid for your foot, which you keep shooting at. Stop shooting yourself in the foot. Stop trying to invent a better Band-Aid.
I don't know if it's even the right or left wing crowd that is doing the Ozempic face conspiracy cooking online. Like they're talking about all these celebrities that now have these saggy skin faces as a result of Ozempic, or it's the other one. It's like I can't remember the name of it, but it's like
Wegovy,
probably. Wegovy, something like that. But like that's what they're saying now. It's like the same people who were cooking up the conspiracies about every celebrity who dies, dying of the COVID vax. They're also doing like Ozempic face conspiracies or whatever.
That's so sad, right? It's like for us, the news is important. It's a symbol of what is happening in the world, and we want to get it right, and we want the truth, and we don't want reactionary shit. But for most people, what's going on in the world is entertainment, and so they want the most ridiculous shit. Aliens built the pyramids. Like, no, dude, relax.
Hilarious.
There's more, like MK Ultra, like kids. You can have way more fun. I say kids, I should say boomers. Boomers, you can have way more fun with conspiracy theories if you look up the real ones.
Right. Yeah.
They're great. Yeah.
Yep.
So, well, look, we'll end it there. We'll talk after this. We're going to plan next week. Everybody come out next week. We're going to have a new topic. This week was COINTELPRO. We might go deeper into COINTELPRO, or we could switch gears and do something else. But we're always happy to hear from you. Let us know what you think. We're going to start a big thing. We're not stopping until all humans realize how bad it is.
Oh, yeah. I like that.
Anything you want to add before we go?
No, I mean, this is great. Thank you again for recording with me. It's always fun to hash out a topic. And I think we work well together. Looking forward to doing it next week.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Don't let your meatloaf. Peace.